The Ocampan dogs blew 97 human civilians out of the sky, then smirked about it. So the Terran Space Navy gritted our teeth and decided to show them how humanity says hello. Captain Nathan Lewis's knuckles whitened as he finished reading the urgent diplomatic communique in his ready room aboard the TSN Atlas. He shook his head in disbelief. The Ocampans had always been a pretentious and snooty galactic power, but this was a new low even for them. Just hours ago, an Ocampan dreadnought had fired upon and utterly annihilated the human merchant vessel SS Horizon as it transited an unclaimed star system between Sol and Ocampa. Not a single one of the 97 souls aboard survived. The Ocampan Imperial Council's justification: they claimed the Horizon had failed to transmit proper ID and clearance codes and had the gall to accuse the human crew of attempting to hack the dreadnought systems. As if a lightly armed civilian freighter stood a snowball's chance in hell of cracking military-grade cybersecurity. Human diplomats lodged fierce protests, pointing out the Horizon's spotless record and the minor detail that the Ocampans never even requested identification before opening fire with a full particle beam volley. But the imperious Ocampans refused to budge from their stance, demanding Earth accept responsibility and pay reparations for the loss of their time and energy pulses. Pay reparations. More like pour rocket fuel on the flames. Nathan pulled up classified fleet readiness reports and Ocampan ship estimates on his display, studying them with a grim expression. This arrogant act of aggression could not go unanswered. If the Terran Space Navy backed down now, the Ocampa would see it as confirmation that humans were a weak, inferior species to be pushed around and bullied. No, if it came to it, humanity would send a clear message, written in starfire and blood: don't fuck with Earth. Even if the Ocampan's ships outnumbered humanity's by 3-1, the TSN would make the bastards pay for every inch of space in wrecked warships and body bags. This brewing conflict would be humanity's first interstellar war, and the stakes could not be higher. If the Ocampans triumphed, they would reduce Earth to a protectorate, a euphemism for occupation and enslavement of the human race. Captain Lewis vowed not to let that happen. He would ready the Atlas and her crew to spearhead the first strike should diplomacy fail. And if this came to all-out war, he would lead the human fleets to victory or die trying. Humanity's very freedom depended on it. The orders came down from Terran Space Command. Captain Nathan Lewis was to lead the TSN Atlas to the disputed star system where the Ocampans had slaughtered 97 human civilians. Their mission: show the flag and stiffen humanity's naval presence, hopefully deterring any further Ocampan provocations. Nathan could read between the lines. What Command really wanted was for him to shove a torpedo up the Ocampan's scaly asses if they so much as twitched the wrong way, and he was more than happy to oblige. As the Atlas transitioned through warp space, Nathan pored over classified intelligence on the Ocampans. They were a notoriously xenophobic and militaristic species who looked down on lesser races like humans. The Ocampan Imperial Fleet boasted highly advanced technology, with their ships bristling with particle beam weapons and impenetrable energy shielding. But Nathan noted a critical weakness. Ocampan commanders relied heavily on AI-controlled drone fighters rather than pilots, and their tactics were rigid and unimaginative. Mobility and unpredictability, Nathan muttered to himself. Hit them in waves from multiple vectors, force them to react to us. He began formulating an attack plan, should push come to disintegrate. Captain, we've arrived at the target system, Commander Jing reported over the intercom. Long-range sensors show 15 Ocampan capital ships holding position on the far side. Orders? Nathan strode onto the bridge, jaw set. Hail them! A grey-skinned Ocampan with cold black eyes appeared on the view screen, his angular face twisting into a sneer. This is Admiral Uko of the Ocampan Imperial Navy. You have violated the sovereign territory of the Ocampan Empire. Withdraw now, or be destroyed. With respect, Admiral, this system is listed as unclaimed under interstellar law, Nathan replied coolly. My fleet is conducting legal transit, Perhaps it is you who should leave to avoid any unpleasant incidents." Uko's eyes flashed with rage at the human's impudence. "You dare threaten me? The mighty Ocampan war fleet will swat your puny ships like insects. You have no idea of our power. When the Empire's full might is unleashed, your pathetic Earth will burn like dry kindling." Nathan's voice remained level, but inside he seethed with barely contained fury. This arrogant Ocampan prick was openly gloating about slaughtering human civilians and enslaving his species. "Careful, Admiral. For someone threatening to reduce our homeworld to ashes, you seem awfully confident that your ships can back up that big mouth of yours. Would be a real shame if our puny human fleet ripped them apart and sent you slinking back to Ocampa with your tail between your legs." "Enough," Uko snarled, spittle flying. "You have been warned, human. Leave now or be annihilated when we—" Nathan cut the channel with a flick of his wrist. He turned to his tactical officer. "Raise shields, charge weapons, and put me on fleet-wide." Nathan met Uko's fiery gaze with implacable calm. "I don't take orders from you, Admiral. This is an unclaimed system under interstellar law, and we have every right to be here. I'll say it one more time. Stand down and leave this space immediately. Any further provocations will be met with force." Uko's scaled face contorted with rage. "Insolent humans, you've just signed your death warrant." The view screen went dark as he severed the connection. "Sensors are tracking the Ocampan fleet moving into attack formation," the tactical officer reported. "They're powering up weapons and launching fighters." Nathan sprang into action. "All ships form up around the Atlas and prepare for battle. Launch Falcon squadrons to intercept those drones, charge the particle lances, and load torpedo bays." The bridge crew hurried to carry out his orders, hands flying over glowing control panels. The Atlas rumbled as its engines flared to life, the human dreadnought moving to the center of the defensive sphere. Sleek Falcon fighters poured from its hangar bays, racing to meet the incoming Ocampan attack craft. Suddenly alarms blared. "Captain, new contact emerging from FTL," the sensor officer shouted. "It's a small ship broadcasting a distress beacon." On the view screen, a battered spacecraft shot out of subspace, careening towards the Ocampan fleet. Its hull was scorched and pitted, engines flickering erratically. A garbled transmission reached the Atlas, laced with static. "Mayday, mayday. This is the refugee transport Kala's Hope, fleeing persecution on Kala Prime. Our life support is failing. We need immediate assistance. Please, we seek asylum." But the Ocampans ignored the desperate plea. Their particle beams lanced out, tearing into the unshielded vessel. The transport exploded in a blinding flash, debris spinning into the void. Nathan clenched his fists as he watched the slaughter of innocents. "Sir, I'm picking up a faint life sign," the sensor officer called out. "There's an escape pod in the wreckage, but its systems are going critical. The occupant won't survive much longer." Nathan made a split-second decision. "Transporter room, lock onto that pod and beam the survivor directly to sickbay. Have a security team meet them there." "Aye, sir." The Atlas's transporters hummed, snatching the Ocampan refugee from the brink of death. Minutes later, the intercom chirped. "Bridge, this is Dr. Patel. The Ocampan male is in serious condition but stable. He's lucky to be alive." Nathan allowed himself a small sigh of relief. Even as the Ocampan warships loomed on the view screen, they had saved one life at least. He turned to his comms officer. "Open a channel to the Ocampan flagship. Let's see how Uko reacts to us rescuing his people while he murders them." The Admiral's enraged visage filled the screen once more. "You dare harbor those traitors and malcontents? That filth you recovered is a criminal, an enemy of the glorious Ocampan state. Surrender him for execution at once." Nathan stared back unflinchingly. "Tovak is under the protection of the Terran Space Navy. He stays with us." Down in sickbay, Dr. Patel gently treated the battered Ocampan's wounds, offering him sips of water. Although weak, he met her eyes with gratitude. "Thank you," Tovak rasped in accented English. "I am called Tovak. My family and I spoke out against the brutality of the Imperial Council. For this, we were imprisoned as dissidents. I managed to escape, but the others—" He trailed off, eyes glistening. "I do not know what became of them," I only hope they still live. Patel squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. You're safe now, Tovak. We'll do everything we can to help you and your people. You have my word. Back on the bridge, Uko was practically frothing at the mouth as Nathan refused his demands. This means war, human. Prepare to be obliterated. Nathan cut the channel with a sharp gesture. He had no intention of handing Tovak over to be murdered by his own brutal government. If Uko wanted a fight, then the TSN would give him one he'd never forget. Uko's face contorted with unbridled rage as Nathan defied his ultimatum. The Ocampan admiral slammed a fist into his command console. All ships, launch fighters, annihilate those human scum! Hundreds of angular insectoid drone fighters swarmed from the Ocampan fleet's launch bays like a horde of angry wasps. Their plasma cannons flared to life as they streaked towards the TSN battle group on plumes of blue thrust. Incoming fighters, the Atlas's tactical officer shouted. I count over 300 bogies inbound, closing fast. Engage point defenses, full power to shields, Nathan barked. The human fleet's CIWS lasers and 20mm Gatling guns swiveled to track the incoming drones. Searing beams of coherent light and hails of tungsten rounds reached out to meet the Ocampan attack craft. Explosions peppered the void as the outer layer of drones vanished in brief flashes of vaporized metal. But many more broke through the defensive screen. Plasma bolts hammered the human ship's shields in rippling waves of incandescent energy. The lighter escort frigates reeled as the onslaught battered their defenses. Hull breach on the Hornet, an ensign cried out. They've lost main power. Nathan gritted his teeth as the stricken frigate listed out of formation, belching smoke and debris. They couldn't trade punches with the Ocampans head-on. All ships execute attack pattern Delta, he ordered. Break formation and engage at will. Force them to split their fire. The human fleet scattered in all directions, like a flock of startled birds. Point defense guns blazing, the frigates and destroyers juked and weaved, preventing the drones from drawing an effective bead. The Atlas and her fellow dreadnoughts charged straight into the maelstrom, their more powerful shields allowing them to weather the brunt of the assault. On the bridge, Tovak gripped a tactical console, eyes darting over the swirling melee. Captain, I recognize these attack patterns. The drones are being controlled by a central AI matrix. If we can disrupt its coordination, their formation will fall apart. Nathan nodded grimly. Can you get a lock on the command signal? Give me a moment. Tovak's fingers flew across the console. They're transmitting coordinates to the EW suite now. A millisecond later, the Atlas's electronic warfare array pulsed, flooding the ether with static and jamming. The Ocampan fighters shuddered as if struck, their perfect coordination faltering. Seizing the momentary advantage, the human ships pressed their attack. The Atlas and her dreadnought kin ploughed through the drone swarms, their shields sparking and overloading but holding together. Point-blank broadsides from their mass accelerators and laser batteries tore into the Ocampan ship's flanks. One battlecruiser reeled away, a gaping hole punched clean through its midsection. Atmosphere and debris geysered from the wound as the once mighty warship listed drunkenly, escape pods flying from its battered hull like panicked insects. Their armor can't withstand a sustained bombardment, Tovak said, analyzing the sensor feeds with a critical eye. If we can knock out their shields first... Nathan's eyes gleamed as the pieces fell into place. He leaned forward in his command chair, a predatory smile playing across his lips. Fleet-wide channel, he snapped. All ships were going to overload their shields with a massive EMP burst, divert power to capacitors, and stand by to fire on my mark. Tovak looked up sharply. Captain, at that range we'll be caught in the blast radius too. It'll fry our shields and half our systems. A risk we'll have to take, Nathan replied grimly. We'll never punch through those shields otherwise, and when we do... He met Tovak's gaze, a cold fire burning in his eyes. We'll send these Ocampan bastards straight to hell. The Atlas shuddered as a volley of plasma fire hammered into her bow. Warning klaxons blared and damage reports flooded in, but Nathan ignored them all. His world narrowed to the glowing tactical display and the snarling visage of Admiral Uko on the viewscreen. "All ships charge the line," he roared. "Straight down their throats, ready EMP burst and fire." As one, the human fleet surged forward, heedless of the blistering Ocampan counterfire. The Atlas led the charge, her hull pitted and scarred, the bodies of friend and foe alike spattering her once gleaming flanks. At point-blank range, just off the Ocampan's bow, the human ships unleashed their electromagnetic fury. A blinding white pulse erupted from each human vessel, the space between the two fleets suddenly awash with St. Elmo's fire. The Ocampan's shields flared and vanished. Tovak crowed in triumph as their sensors registered the catastrophic overload. "Now hit them now," Nathan bellowed. The human ships pounced like a pack of wolves on a wounded elk. Laser batteries and railguns thundered, hurling javelins of directed energy and hypersonic slugs into the defenseless Ocampan hulls. Torpedoes and missiles ripple-fired from their tubes, boring through weakened armor to detonate deep within the enemy Leviathans. Geysers of flame and molten metal erupted from the savaged Ocampan ships. A battlecruiser snapped in half, its spine shattered by a trio of torpedo strikes. The flaming halves tumbled away, trailing tattered streamers of debris and flash-frozen corpses. Another destroyer vanished in a sun-bright fireball as its reactor went critical, the shockwave buffeting the nearby ships like leaves in a storm. Uko's flagship, spewing flames and wreckage, wrenched into a desperate turn, trying to bring its guns to bear on the Atlas. But Nathan was faster. The human dreadnought's main battery erupted in a staccato thunder of railgun fire, all guns concentrating on a single point in the Ocampan shields. The invisible barrier crumpled like a silk curtain under a sledgehammer. Armor shattered and buckled as the hypersonic rounds punched deep into the flagship's guts. Secondary explosions ripped through its hull as the Atlas poured fire into the grievous wound. Uko's face contorted in mingled rage and disbelief as his bridge disintegrated around him. He opened his mouth to bellow one final curse and vanished in a maelstrom of fire and flying metal as a torpedo found the flagship's main magazine. The mighty warship burst apart from within, a miniature supernova blooming where it had once been. The Ocampan fleet, decapitated and demoralized, broke apart like a dropped glass sculpture. The remaining ships belched escape pods and turned tail, fleeing before the human onslaught. The Atlas and her sisters fell upon them like sharks in a feeding frenzy. Crippled Ocampan ships shuddered and died under the merciless barrage, vanishing in eye-searing fireballs. The human fleet harried the retreating enemy, cutting down stragglers and leaving a trail of drifting wreckage in their wake. On the Atlas's bridge, the crew erupted in ragged cheers. They had done the impossible, driven off an Ocampan battle fleet and sent their vaunted admiral fleeing with his tail between his legs. But Nathan felt no elation, only a grim satisfaction and the aching knowledge that this was only the beginning. The Ocampans would be back, thirsting for revenge. The battle had been won, but the war was just getting started. As the battered Ocampan ships limped away, Admiral Uko pounded his fist on the armrest of his command chair, his eyes burning with humiliated rage. How could he have so badly misjudged these humans? Their ships were inferior, their numbers far smaller, yet through sheer tenacity and unorthodox tactics, they had repelled his assault and sent the mighty Ocampan fleet fleeing like whipped dogs. It was unacceptable, intolerable. "All ships, hold position," Uko snarled over the comm. "Regroup and prepare for another attack run." But his order was met with a telling silence, broken only by the crackle of static. Finally, a voice spoke up, Captain Varro of the battlecruiser Inexorable, his tone heavy with exhaustion and barely suppressed fear. "Admiral, with all due respect, we cannot continue this fight. The Inexorable has lost main power, half my crew is dead or wounded. We must withdraw and effect repairs before—" Uko cut him off with a bellow of rage. "You snivelling coward! You would tuck tail and run from these primitive apes? Where is your Ocampan pride, your devotion to the Imperial Council?" "Admiral, please," Another voice chimed in desperately. "Commander Naya of the destroyer Raptor. The humans have crippled my ship. Our weapons are offline, shields down. We are defenseless. I have no choice but to retreat." One by one, Uko's captains voiced their dismay and pleaded for a reprieve. Grim damage reports flooded in, engines failing, life support critical, weapons depleted. The Ocampan fleet had reached its breaking point, but Uko would not hear of it. His eyes blazed with fanatical light as he shrieked into the comm. "Traitors, weaklings! You dishonor the Ocampan race with your spinelessness. The Imperial Council will hear of this treachery." Without hesitation, Uko entered a series of commands into his console. On a dozen Ocampan ships, the captain's eyes widened in horror as their control panels locked them out, a chilling automated voice echoing through their bridges. Command authority revoked. Helm control transferred to Fleet Flagship Invincible. Uko's face appeared on their view screens, twisted into a mask of rage and madness. "The price of disloyalty is death," he hissed. On the Inexorable's bridge, Captain Varro leaped from his chair with a shout of alarm, but too late. The ship's computer executed its final command, venting all atmosphere and killing Varro and his bridge crew in seconds. Similar scenes played out on 11 other Ocampan ships, as Uko coldly butchered the captains who dared to question him. "Now," he growled to his terrified crew, "we finish this. Set a course to re-engage the humans, full combat speed." The Ocampan fleet, now reduced to a mere 8 vessels, accelerated sluggishly towards the human formation. Many sported gaping wounds in their hulls, leaking atmosphere and trailing debris. But they came on nonetheless, driven by Uko's iron will and merciless disregard for life. Aboard the TSN Atlas, Tovak watched the viewscreen with growing horror. He knew all too well the depths of Uko's fanatical devotion to the Imperial Council and his utter ruthlessness in carrying out their will. "Captain," he said urgently, turning to Nathan, "you must not underestimate Uko. He will keep throwing ships at you until none remain, no matter the cost in Ocampan blood. He cares nothing for the lives of his soldiers. We cannot prevail in a battle of attrition." Nathan clenched his jaw, taking in the harrowing sight of the enemy fleet. The Atlas shuddered around him, damage reports flooding in. His ships were battered and depleted, their crews pushed to the brink of endurance. They had fought valiantly and achieved the impossible, but Tovak was right. They could not withstand another frontal assault. "Their great man once said, 'Never fight a land war in Asia,'" Nathan muttered. "Substitute land for space and Asia for the Ocampan Empire, and I think the same principle applies." He turned to his helmsman with a grim smile. "Time for some death or glory. Set an intercept course for the enemy flagship. We're taking that mad bastard down or dying in the attempt." The helmsman nodded grimly. "Aye, sir. Plotting intercept vector. Course laid in." Nathan toggled the fleet-wide comm. "All ships, this is the captain. I won't lie to you, we're hurt bad. That Imperial son of a bitch is coming in for the kill. We can't beat him toe-to-toe, but we don't have to. While he's fixated on grinding us down, we're going to cut the head off the snake. The Atlas will close to point-blank range and engage the enemy flagship. The rest of the fleet screen our advance. Keep those bastards off us for as long as you can. With luck, we'll gut Uko's command ship and send the Ocampa running. Without luck, it's been an honor serving with you all." A chorus of acknowledgements came back, every voice steady and resolute, despite the direness of the situation. Nathan nodded in silent approval. "All right, people, you have your orders. Let's finish this. Atlas out." The Atlas's engines roared to full power, the mighty dreadnought accelerating towards the heart of the Ocampan formation. The human fleet spread out in a defensive screen, phalanxing their wounded ships and presenting their strongest defenses to the enemy. Uko watched the Atlas's approach on the view screen, his lips curling into a sneer. The arrogant humans thought to challenge him directly? So be it. He would take great pleasure in personally obliterating that upstart captain and his flagship. "Target all weapons on that ship," he snapped to his tactical officer. "I want it reduced to atoms." The battered Ocampan fleet opened fire in a blistering salvo, pouring everything they had into the lone human dreadnought. The Atlas shuddered under the onslaught, its shields flaring and failing, beam weapons and plasma blasts ripping into its armored hull. Geysers of flame erupted from breaches in its skin, atmosphere howling into the void. But the Atlas did not falter. It plunged onward through the firestorm, the human fleet nipping at the Ocampan's flanks, drawing their fire and disrupting their formation. Nathan gripped the arms of his command chair, his face set like stone as his ship burned and died around him. "Report," he barked. "Shields are down," the tactical officer shouted over the din of alarms and exploding consoles. "Hull integrity at 30%. We're venting atmosphere on all decks." "Maintain course and speed," Nathan ordered. "Divert all power to engines and forward guns." The Atlas was a flaming comet now, a shattered, glowing ruin hurtling towards the Invincible like an avenging angel. The range fell to a mere 100 kilometers, then 50, then 10. At this distance, the flagship loomed impossibly huge in the view screen, filling the screen from edge to edge. "Fire everything," Nathan roared. The Atlas forward batteries erupted in a cataclysmic salvo, railgun slugs and plasma bolts smashing into the Invincible's shields at point-blank range. The barrier flared and collapsed, unable to withstand the titanic energies pouring into it. A heartbeat later, the Atlas weapons tore into the unprotected hull, ripping gaping, molten wounds deep into the ship's vital organs. On the Invincible's bridge, Uko screamed incoherently as explosions blossomed throughout his wounded ship. Consoles detonated in showers of sparks. Bulkheads buckled and collapsed. A support beam speared down from the ceiling and impaled Uko through the chest, pinning him to his command chair like a butterfly on a card. "Helm hard to port," he gurgled through a mouthful of blood, refusing to relinquish control even as his life ebbed away. "All guns, fire! Fire!" But it was too late. The Invincible was a dead ship, its weapons and engines utterly demolished by the Atlas's brutal assault. The human dreadnought, burning from a dozen mortal wounds, smashed into the Ocampan flagship like the fist of an angry god. The two broken titans erupted in a sun-bright conflagration, a new star blazing briefly against the darkness of space. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.